We're going to toast the host and how to entertain at home with Simon James Bailey, live in the studios. If you like to host a dinner party or you have been thinking about hosting a dinner party, our next guest is an expert in this. Simon James Bailey, Toast the Host, How to Entertain at Home. He's going to be debuting on SBS Food in just under a month. And I'm pleased to say Simon is standing opposite me in the studios. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Ollie.
How many dinner parties do you reckon you've hosted over the years?
I did the maths a while ago. There was a really good article that came out of this woman who was charging people $20 a head to come to a house for dinner. And I thought, how much have I spent on dinner parties? And I stupidly did the maths. Yep. It works out to conservatively, about 500 occasions that I've hosted in my house over the years. And then I stupidly crunched the numbers, and it's more than $100,000.
I'm sure it probably is.
In the last 25 years, having people over for dinner. I'm not suggesting people spend that kind of money, but because I love doing it, more than 500. So I've had a few turns around the sun hosting people at my home.
And people will recall, obviously, Simon, when you're on Nine here with Nine News,
yes.
Current Affair.
Yes.
You've done a little bit of everything, and now you're on your way to Hollywood.
I know, right? Well, it's so funny because I, studied at Whopper and I did television for a long time, and then I went to the strategic communications world. And it's been bugging me for a little while that I had this idea of breaking down a formal dinner party into bite-sized pieces and basically teaching people what I do, really, so they could invite me to their house for dinner rather than me having to cook. And then the opportunity came up where a friend of mine was working in Cape Town and had just worked with this production company. And it's just one of those things where if you start creating the energy, it starts to flow in the right direction. Wrote the script for it. Next minute, I'm working with a production team, and it all came together. We did it in an 8-day shoot, and then I jumped on a plane, went to LA to get an agent, just so I could start that process because that's a long lead time, and then put it out to the networks here, and SBS, made it home.
How fun. You are really living a dream here, Simon.
Yeah.
It's not work, is it?
It's not work when you're doing something you love. And that's the thing. I really sat down and thought, what do I love doing? And I love having people over for dinner. And then having crunched the numbers, I thought, well, I've made a sizable investment in doing this for myself. And of course, quite often people say to me, often friends will say, I'd love to have you over for dinner, but I can't do what you do. And then when you hear that a few times, you think, hang on, well, I've worked in TV. I know the shtick. I'll just make a show and teach people how to do it.
So you obviously set a very high standard for a dinner party. If you get invited to one of Simon James Bailey's dinner parties, do not turn down that invitation.
No, I've been told there is one of my friends, Bianca, who's in the show. Yeah. She does say during one of the lunches, you never turn an invitation down when Simon invites you. Because the whole thing is care and consideration of people's experience when they're coming to eat at your home. And I make sure that I check what people will and won't eat. And I cook, really easy to prepare food that's, that are winners on the plate. So I don't have to worry about freaking out about, people worrying about what they're eating. And the whole point for me is be prepared, do everything you can before people arrive, because I actually like the bit where you sit down and talk to your friends over a glass of wine.
Yeah, to entertain them. I mean, we look towards so many other countries in particular, the Italians as an example.
Yes.
Right? They have such a wonderful culture whereby you bring friends and family together and you enjoy an entire afternoon or an entire evening, a couple of glasses of wine,
couple of wines,
tell a few stories and just have fun.
And then that's my hobby. That's my pastime. And I think I can think back on all the times I've had really wonderful occasions with people in my home, and we've laughed, we've cried, we've disco danced, to cringeworthy 80s music, having had a few too many cocktails. But when I think back on, the amount of fun that I've created by having people coming to my home and enjoying that experience. So that's really something I wanted to share through the show.
That's exciting. What's your key to a dinner party? So if you're a complete novice, but you want to get into that, you want to invite over, 4 people or whatever, and you want to give them a good time. Yeah. Preparation is obviously your number one piece of advice, Simon.
Well, if anyone was in the Scouts or the Girl Guides, and they always say, the motto is be prepared, right? I always say, try and think ahead of what you can do. Well, try and think of what you can do ahead of time. I mean, things like my friend Melinda, when she hosts a dinner party, she'll set the table, days in advance, so it's ready to go. It's one less thing to think about. I like to make, slow food in the oven. So slow roasting lamb, you put it on in the morning, and then by the evening it's ready to go, and you don't have to do anything. The oven does all the heavy lifting. And then things like dessert, you make in the show, I make a chocolate pot, which is basically an eggless chocolate mousse. And that's something you can make days in advance. It
Yeah.
sits in your fridge and it's ready to serve. All you have to do is put some berries on it and some ice cream on the side and you're good to go. So with that in mind, pick things that are easy to do days in advance so you don't have to stress out and do everything on the day. And whatever you do not cook something for the first time when you have people over.
So you need that dummy run. You need to make sure it tastes good.
You do.
So as the host, you need to make sure that what you're presenting to people is what you like, what they want.
Yes.
It's going to work.
Yes.
And what about themed parties or events?
I love to team with a theme. I just love it. So you'll see in the series, episode 1 is actually the theme for episode 1 is Blush and Bashful, a little nod to the film Still Magnolias, and it's an Italian themed lunch.
Yep.
Where I thought I've lent into this idea of pink, and then when I was getting all the ingredients for the show, in it I make spaghetti carbonara. And I found this beetroot pasta that, when you cook, it's deliciously pink. So I bought that, and it actually looks really vibrant on camera. And there's quite a few different versions of coloured fettuccinis that you can buy. So I just sort of lent in really hard
That's
in this
cool.
whole idea of pink on pink food. So there's a pink dip to start with, and then there's the pink carbonara, and then there's a raspberry meringue. So, so I did have a little fun with the theme, but in terms of what visually, it's quite nice to have the colour.
And is there ever a maximum number you think you should host, or is it just as big as your heart wants to be?
Look, I stupidly, it was nice for my family, but I hosted a Christmas one year and there's 17 people. And I decided to say to everyone, no, don't bring anything. I'll do it all. And I cooked, prepared for days. And then you forget that that's 17 sets of everything, cutlery, crockery, glassware. And of course, typical, I had to have everything matching. But it was a real labour of love, you might say. But at the end of the day, I was absolutely exhausted and I thought, no, I won't do it again. So the following year, I had about 15, members of the family, and I gave everyone jobs. So on their place card was a little job that they had to do, whether they cleared the table,
Clever.
cleaned dishes. So I recruited everyone to help me. I learned the hard way.
Well, Simon, I hope it is a roaring success. Toast
Thank
the
you.
Host, How to Entertain at Home, and it all hits SBS Food and On Demand early
Yes.
next month.
It does. On the 7th of June, 5:30 on SBS Food, and then the whole series is launched on SBS On Demand.
Well, we'll speak to you from Hollywood.
Thanks, Holly.
There you go, Simon James Bailey joining us live on 6PR. We'll head to the UK in just a moment.
Word on the street for WA Asset.